Okay, it's 20 past 8 on the 17th of April. This is the last but one video on the houses. I'm going to look at Chiron. Every single one of us has a dark side, and most of us spend years, if not decades, trying to get rid of what we see as being our shadow. And the more we try and get rid of it, the stronger it gets, until in time that shadow consumes and absorbs us, and we become the person we've always been scared of being. And those people who don't look at their shadow will become in time, according to the nature of Chiron in their chart, fragmented, dichotomized, disintegrated, and they will always be denying their true nature. Whereas people who look at their shadow and go, okay, I'm never going to be good enough, but I'm always getting better. There is a little part of me that is corrupt, sordid, twisted, perverted, ugly, miserable, sad and lonely, or whatever. You could choose any 2 from 10. And if you say to your dark side, right, I've got a nice little dungeon at the core of my being here where you can fester away to your heart's content, then it will become part of a team, and even under carefully controlled circumstances, it will come out to play. Chiron represents our shadow. It's the side of ourselves we don't like to look at. And the house position of Chiron is often very indicative of showing where one's individual, internal dislike of oneself is. With Chiron in the first house, there is going to be a dislike of one's appearance or one's body shape or one's facial characteristics. And no matter how good you look in other people's eyes, with Chiron in the first house, there's always going to be a tendency to put oneself down in terms of physical appearance. With Chiron in the second house, it is a question of finding oneself to be of value and worth. You can have all the money in the world and all the possessions in the world, but if you don't feel that you're worth it, then it's never going to be enough. Real value and worth comes in terms of self-acceptance, not possessions and resources. Never going to be good enough, always getting better. Chiron in the third house is often represented by people who have problems with siblings, or who stutter, or who have communications in some way when young. It does give a greater indication of a broad-minded and a broad-reaching communication when older. Chiron in the fourth house often denotes an absent parent, particularly the mother, or some type of smothering as much as mothering, or the nurturing influence was always conditional in some shape or form. Often issues of abandonment. Chiron in the fifth house is people who have trouble either bearing children or growing up with children, or finding that their creative output is stunted in some way when younger. Chiron in the sixth house knows intrinsically that they can't heal anyone else without also healing themselves, and conversely they cannot heal themselves without also healing others. What goes round comes round. Chiron in the seventh house people when younger doubt their suitability and their adaptability for relationships, and they often find that other people use them as a springboard for their success, and they don't even say thanks, let alone take them with them. So Chiron in the seventh house needs to cultivate a good sense of equality, sharing and teamwork in all forms of one-to-one relationships. Chiron in the eighth house has no option but to deal with the dark and the notions of power. Otherwise there will always be obsessive and compulsive issues based around fear and even terror. You need to live and face the dark. Nothing wrong with the dark. Chiron in the ninth house is perhaps in its best position, because here it aspires to live life according to its own personal beliefs and philosophies. Never going to be good enough, always getting better. It is striving with Chiron in the ninth. Chiron in the 10th often indicates someone who tries to become very successful professionally, but finds that other people use their efforts to get ahead at their expense. And it is not really about being famous or big. It is about being successful in terms of finding success within oneself, being content and pleased with oneself, feeling that you're doing a good job. There's a good Chiron in the 10th. Chiron in the 11th will always end up being the coordinator, facilitator, organizer of community, bending over backwards to be of service to community, but never really feeling part of it until someone else takes the responsibility for organizing them and they let them do it. And Chiron in the 12th, there is the potential here for self-sabotage, for not so much self-wounding, but self-sabotage, putting oneself down, feelings of self-denigration, and often people with Chiron in the 12th house do spend a lot of time alone. And once they find the difference between being alone and being lonely, they really flourish and bloom. Chiron, where you sabotage yourself, where you empower yourself, where you heal yourself, and ultimately where you reach out to empower others.